What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over Final Crisis. Yes, we are. Oh my gosh, guys, it has been a long time since we jumped into the main storyline for Final Crisis, because basically after Final Crisis number 3, if you're new to my channel, but after Final Crisis number 3, we had to cover a lot of tie-ins. Final Crisis, Secret Files, Submit, Resist, Revelations. I mean, you had a lot of different tie-ins that all took place after Final Crisis number 3, but of course, before Final Crisis number 4. Either way, though, we're going to jump back into the main storyline, and we're going to pick up with Final Crisis number 4 and Final Crisis number 5. Now, when it comes to Final Crisis number 4 and number 5, you have to remember that by this point in the Final Crisis storyline, Darkseid won. Like, basically, he had used the anti-life equation on the planet Earth, and most of the humans on Earth no longer have free will. They're under Darkseid's control, and that right there is very important, because now it's the heroes who are out there who are not under Darkseid's control, just trying to find a way to resist his control, but to also find a way to free their friends, to free the human race, to basically defeat Darkseid. And so when it comes to Final Crisis number 4 and number 5, it really kind of starts with the idea that they're going to have to find something quickly if they want to actually defeat Darkseid, because if they don't find something very soon, it could be the end for everything across the multiverse, actually. Now, getting into Final Crisis number 4, the opening pages, you do have the opening pages basically remind us how the anti-life equation was spread out to the entire world. And of course, it was done by technology. Because even though this storyline came out back in 2008, you still had basically humans latching on to technology even more than they did in the past. And so with that, it's kind of like, what's the best way to spread a virus to make people fall under Darkseid's control? Well, of course, technology, because their eyes are always glued to some kind of technology. TVs, cell phones, computer screens, and the list goes on. But that is how the anti-life equation got spread to the entire world, and most of the people of the Earth are basically under Darkseid's control. Now, that is the moment where we basically pick up with the Ray. Now, this is the second Ray. The first Ray was his father. Either way, though, this Ray actually first appeared back in the Ray number 1, and I want to say back in 1992. Either way, though, when it comes to the Ray, he basically has a range of different kinds of powers that involve light. Like, for example, he is able to travel at the speed of light, which honestly is the perfect thing to have right now for this kind of situation. Because you do have the Ray basically tell Green Arrow and Black Canary that he had just left the Watchtower, and he came to the Hall of Justice to see if there's anybody here left who can help the rest of the heroes fight off against the forces of Darkseid. But then that is the moment we do come to find out the Ray also has the Tattoo Man with him. Now remember, the Tattoo Man basically is a guy whose tattoos come to life. Now he was the main character in one of the tie-ins that we did, which was Final Crisis Submit, where at first the Tattoo Man was your regular bad guy, but then after seeing Black Lightning be a hero, the Tattoo Man realized that your actions decide what you are or who you are, if you are a bad guy or if you are a superhero. And so after seeing Black Lightning basically sacrifice himself to save the Tattoo Man and his family, you have the Tattoo Man basically say, okay, fine, then I am going to help out the rest of the heroes to fight against Darkseid. Now, we do see what heroes are actually here right now at the Hall of Justice. So Green Arrow, Black Canary, the children of Wally West, and the wife of Jay Garrick, and also Barbara Gordon as well. But basically, it's one of the different camps across the world that are trying to resist against the armies of Darkseid. But of course, they're having a hard time actually doing that. Now, you do have the children of Wally West tell the Ray and also the Tattoo Man that right now the Daily Planet is still publishing stories or newspapers to help spread the word on what's happening right now around the world. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, how in the world is the Daily Planet still up and running? On top of that, though, how in the world are they able to get word out about what's happening around the world? Well, we kind of find out that the Daily Planet actually set up shop in the Fortress of Solitude so that it's a safe zone, but to also use that safe zone to spread the word on what's happening right now around the world. But then we jump over to Command D Bunker. Now remember, Command D Bunker is the location where you have Godfrey, Simeon, and Mokari basically working on turning Dan Turbin's body into Darkseid. Because remember, in the earlier chapters of Final Crisis, we were following a character known as Dan Turbin, this detective from Metropolis. But then he was grabbed, and we kind of find out that basically Darkseid's essence was inside of him, and so his body is basically being turned into Darkseid. Now, if you're wondering why in the world that is happening, because there was a storyline, and I forgot the name of that storyline, but basically there was a war between the new gods, and most of the gods of Apocalypse were killed off, supposedly, but then their bodies were able to find new bodies on Earth, human bodies. Their essences were basically just transferred over to human bodies, and when those human bodies are turned into the new gods of Apocalypse. And so when it came to Darkseid, though, everybody that he basically took over, they couldn't handle what he was. So like their body just would rot away. And so he had to find a new body every certain amount of days. But when it came to Dan Turbin was the perfect choice for Darkseid to basically stay on Earth forever. And so even though the anti-life equation is out there right now, yes, Darkseid is winning the war. Darkseid is still trying to basically take over the body of Dan Turbin. Now, if that happens, then real things are going to pop off. Now, with all that being said, though, you do have Godfrey, Simeon, and Mokari wondering who is going to basically, be the favorite in Darkseid's eyes once he's finally here and taken over Dan Turbin's body. But then we have Kalibak appear. Now, Kalibak is a very important character for the New Gods, but not really for this storyline right here. Because Kalibak is the son of Darkseid. Now, he's also the half-brother of Orion as well. Either way, though, you do have Kalibak getting a new form, where he does look like more of a Tiger Man than he used to look like in the early days of DC Comics. Now, we do jump over to a set of characters who are basically still at the Hall of Justice, the ones we met earlier. Now, of course, right now, they're kind of wondering what in the world could they possibly do to basically help defeat the anti-life equation to stop Darkseid from actually winning. Now, of course, they're trying to wonder if there are any more heroes out there who are still resisting Darkseid's control. Now, of course, right now, we know that because we heard in our tie-ins that there are basically other people out there who are still trying to resist what Darkseid is trying to do. Now, with that being said, though, you do have our heroes at the Hall of Justice basically use the Unternet or the Unternet. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but basically it is an internet system that superheroes use. It's a very top secret internet system where basically heroes can use to communicate with one another. And so when you have our heroes at the Hall of Justice basically use that form of internet, they were able to find out that yes, there are other people out there who are basically still trying to resist against the forces of Darkseid. Like, for example, you have Checkmate, and we actually saw Checkmate back in the Final Crisis Resist storyline we did earlier in this storyline, Final Crisis. But also we see Alan Scott is also still alive, and he has his own group of heroes as well. On top of that, you have Supergirl and her group at the Fortress of Solitude, which that was mentioned earlier in this video. So basically, you do have a lot of different groups out there who are still out there trying to resist against Darkseid, to hopefully stop Darkseid. But you also have people like Black Adam thinking about actually joining the battle as well. And this shows like what's going to happen down the road. That right now you're going to have all the heroes and villains who are basically trying to resist against Darkseid coming together to hopefully stop Darkseid and his forces in some kind of way. Now, you do have the Tattoo Man tell us that when it came to Final Crisis Submit, the storyline we covered earlier in our coverage over Final Crisis, that basically the Black Lightning gave him something that could be very important to actually defeating Darkseid, something called the Circuit. Now, we're going to learn more about the Circuit later on in this video and the last video for Final Crisis. Either way, though, you do have the Tattoo Man tell us that he kept the Circuit safe from the army of Darkseid by basically making it a tattoo on his body. So it was on his skin this entire time. But when he does access the Circuit, his body does change into a new form, but we have no idea what this new form can actually do yet. But right after he does that, well, that is the moment you have Black Lightning appear and destroy the force field around the Hall of Justice. But then we jump over to Barry Allen and Wally West. Now, this is actually very important. And the reason why, because, well, a lot of different things. First, let me remind you guys that Wally West lost Barry Allen years ago. Barry Allen died back in the original Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline. And so Barry Allen been dead for 20 years until Final Crisis came around and said, oh, by the way, Barry is alive again. Now, of course, for Wally West, this is great because he has his uncle again. But these two characters basically race into the future where Darkseid has won completely, and now you have a Wonder Woman out there with some other female characters calling themselves the Furies, going around and trying to make other people submit to Darkseid's control. Now, for Barry Allen, he begins to talk about the idea that basically everything across the multiverse, all realities are going to basically, be destroyed. Thanks to Darkseid, they're falling down into oblivion with Darkseid, meaning that everything across the multiverse is about to die thanks to Darkseid. Now, with that being said, though, you do have Wally actually calm down Barry. And the reason why, because for Wally, he's kind of like, you've been gone for a very long time, and I just got you back. Yes, the world is about to end, or the multiverse, whatever. But I want to say this right here. With you gone, your death, it affected our family very, very much. But to see you here right now and to work with you once again is something great to have. Meaning that we could still actually win this because you and I are here together. And so you do have Barry and Wally actually take down Wonder Woman and her other female characters and just leaves to hopefully find a way to stop all of this mess in their own way. But getting back over to the Hall of Justice, you do have the Justifiers, the army of Darkseid, begin to break into the Hall of Justice, thanks to Black Lightning getting rid of the force field that was protecting the area. Now, with that being said, though, you do have our heroes all try to run to basically boom tubes that can take them over to the Watchtower to get away from this mess right here. The problem is, though, you do have Oliver Queen, a Green Arrow, sacrifice himself to give the other heroes enough time to basically get to the Watchtower, but to also make sure the Justifiers cannot follow. Now, this is huge because Black Canary is also there as well. And so it's Black Canary realizing that her man is about to die. Her man is going to die to basically make sure that she and the rest of their crew still have a chance to help the Earth out to defeat Darkseid. And so in that moment, as she teleports away to the Watchtower, we do see Green Arrow being turned into a Justifier. But then we get a page that shows us that as you have the heroes fighting against the forces of Darkseid, trying to prevent Darkseid from actually winning, you do have Darkseid getting closer and closer and closer to basically taking over the body of Dan Turpin. Now you still have Dan Turpin in there fighting against the power of Darkseid to make sure that his body is not taken over by Darkseid, that his body is not converted into Darkseid's body. Like Dan Turpin is actually still fighting against Darkseid. We can see the battle between the two characters right now. But as the pages go on, you do see that Darkseid is beginning to take over the body of Dan Turpin even more by the seconds, where Dan Turpin's body is turning into Darkseid's body. But then we jump over to Iris West. Now remember, Iris West is basically the aunt to Wally West, but the wife to Barry Allen. Either way, right now, we do see Iris right now walking through the streets of the city that she's in right now, where she does see the forces of Darkseid continuing to do more and more things to basically make sure that Darkseid wins, to make sure that everybody does submit to Darkseid's control. Now, with that being said, though, when she does get home, she does turn the TV on. Now, when she turns the TV on, remember, that is how the anti-life equation was spread out to the entire world, through technology, TV, computer screens, cell phones. Either way, though, when she turns that TV on, the anti-life equation is playing. And so, of course, she's beginning to submit to Darkseid's control. But that is the moment you have Wally and Barry Allen appear. Now, of course, at first, you have Wally tell Barry, hey, man, listen, it's too late for her. Like, she saw the screen, the anti-life equation is going to eat away at her willpower. But then you have Barry kiss Iris. And when he does that, because of his powers, their love, whatever, Barry was able to help Iris overcome the anti-life equation. But getting back to our heroes, we do see that a lot of different things are popping off right now around the world. But for a brief moment, we do see that Alan Scott is telling Hawkgirl that basically right now it seems like the world of the gods are colliding into their own Earth. That means the new gods' planets, New Genesis and Apocalypse, it seems like they're about to crash into Earth, or they're merging together as one. Now, back with Checkmate and Mr. Terrific, out of nowhere, a boom tube opens up and a random car or some kind of vehicle does crash through the building. Now, when that happens, you do have some characters pop out of the vehicle. And one of the characters is Mr. Miracle. Now, Mr. Miracle is here to basically help the heroes defeat Darkseid. Except the problem is, though, because Homeboy crashed through the last base that is owned by Checkmate, and of course, most of the people in the room have no idea who he is, he does get shot right in the chest and falls down. And so now we're left to believe that, well, Mr. Miracle is about to basically die. Now, after that right there, you do have Darkseid kind of show us that he has taken over the body of Dan Turpin. And he does give us a thumb down to show us that basically everything is about to fall. Now, getting into Final Crisis number 5, we actually do pick up with the Green Lanterns. Now remember, in the earlier parts of Final Crisis, basically Hal Jordan was accused for attacking John Stewart. Now, there was no actual hard evidence to show that he was the one who had actually attacked John Stewart, but we were left to believe that he did, because an Alpha Lantern known as Kraken basically said, yep, it was Hal. I had arrested him and brought him here to the Guardians. Now remember, the Alpha Lanterns are kind of like the police force for the Green Lanterns, basically making sure that the regular Green Lanterns do not break any kind of rules at all, that they stay in line. Now, with that being said, though, you did have Kraken bring Hal to the Guardians and say, hey, it was him who attacked John Stewart. The problem is, though, the Guardians are kind of like, no, it couldn't be him. because it's Hal. Like, by this point in DC Comics, even though Hal has done a lot of crazy things in the late 90s and the early 2000s, they're kind of like, yeah, but it's Hal. It's Hal, guys. Like, come on. This man couldn't have done it at all. By the way, you know what? What do the other Earth Lanterns say? Like, what do the other Earth Lanterns say about this situation? And of course, that is the moment you have Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner appear. Because remember, by this point in DC Comics, you only had 4 Green Lanterns. I think now you have like 8 Green Lanterns from Earth. I don't know. Either way, though, you only had 4 at this point in DC Comics. But that is the moment you do have Guy Gardner say that there is some kind of implant inside the brain of Hal Jordan, which is known as a suppressor field chip, to basically kind of make sure that Hal is not able to tell the truth about what happened to John Stewart. But you have Guy and Kyle say that the real person who had actually attacked John Stewart is actually Kraken herself, the Alpha Lantern. But here's the thing, though. This is not actually the Alpha Lantern. I mean, it is, but her body is being possessed by a new god. Of course, a new god from Darkseid, Apocalypse, sorry. And so with that being said, the person who is possessing the body of Kraken is actually Granny. And that right there is actually very important. Because Granny Goodness is kind of like up there in the ranking system for the Apocalypse, forces. And so, of course, right now, she's here for one particular mission. She's trying to give Darkseid the central power battery on Oa. Now remember, the central power battery is what used to basically power the Green Lantern rings. And so right now, she's trying to get that power and give it over to Darkseid to basically make Darkseid even stronger. Now, with that being said, though, you do have the Green Lanterns actually being able to stop her and protect the central power battery. But right after they do stop her, you do have the Green Lanterns basically tell Hal Jordan that when it comes to Earth, the area around Earth is beginning to change, but not in a good way, in a bad way. Now, remember earlier how Barry Allen told Wally West that basically right now it seems that all reality is going to fall apart thanks to Darkseid kind of doing what he is doing right now on Earth? Well, it gets even worse because you then have the other Earth Green Lanterns tell Hal, listen, the space and time around Earth, it seems like they're also falling apart as well. Time is falling apart. It's being crumbled together. Weeks are turning into days. Days being turned into hours, and so on and so on. Basically, time is falling apart. And so now the Green Lanterns have to go to Earth to hopefully help Earth find a way to actually defeat Darkseid. And you do have the Guardians tell Hal, you have 24 hours. You have 24 hours to basically save the universe. Most likely, the multiverse, really. But then we jump back over to the Checkmate facility, and we actually pick up with Renee Montoya, who's right now being interviewed by Talib. Now remember, Talib is one of the few people in charge of Checkmate, but also you have Amanda Waller there. Now you do have these characters basically talking about some of the different things they have going on, like the German Supergirl. Now the German Supergirl is actually Overgirl from Earth 10. Now remember, Earth 10 was the storyline of Superman Red Sun, where basically Superman had crashed into Russia except Metropolis, and he helped Russia out instead of helping America out. That was the Red Sun storyline. And Overgirl is from that Earth right there. Now, with that being said, though, they also talk about the Bio OMAC, a new version of OMAC to help defeat Darkseid. And they're also talking about future global law enforcement. Some kind of new enforcement, some law enforcement to be global to help protect the entire world together. But then we check up on Darkseid. Now, right now, Darkseid is actually at Command D Bunker. Now, remember, Command D Bunker is the main base for Darkseid. But on top of that right now, we do see some of the forces or some of the people who are the higher ups in Darkseid forces basically beg for forgiveness because they had to find a lot of different bodies for Darkseid, but most of the bodies they gave for Darkseid was not working. Because remember what I said earlier, when it came to the new gods of Apocalypse, when they had died, they basically began the process of taking over human bodies on Earth with their essences. And so with that, you had Darkseid having a hard time doing that because he is a very powerful being. And so when he tried to take over somebody's body, their body just rotted away. And so he always had to find a new body. And so you have these guys begging for forgiveness for having to find so many different bodies for Darkseid, but to only finally find one that is perfect for Darkseid. But you have Darkseid say, listen, it's okay, because everything you guys have done, it was a way for us to actually win. Now, we have to get back to the Checkmate facility with Mr. Terrific and also Mr. Miracle, because remember, earlier, Mr. Miracle was shot. And of course, you had everyone freaking out because Mr. Miracle just appeared out of nowhere with his team of heroes known as the Super Young Team. Yes, that's their name. But either way, though, when they appeared, it was kind of like, oh my gosh, where in the world did y'all come from? And on top of that, why are you here? But you didn't have one of the guards of Checkmate shoot Mr. Miracle because they came through a boom tube, which of course means out of nowhere and some kind of futuristic vehicle and crash into the building. And so when they popped out, yeah, you did have one of the guards shoot Mr. Terrific. But basically, you do have Mr. Terrific show that he is okay because what he is wearing currently right now. But he is here to help Checkmate and the other heroes actually stop Darkseid. Now, on top of that, you do have Mr. Terrific do say that with Darkseid right now being around, the Devil God, that basically he's bringing everything down with him. That means all realities across the multiverse, all the universes, whatever, they're all being brought down thanks to Darkseid. It's Darkseid's last hoorah, his last big win. And so with that, you have Mr. Terrific say, I'm going to basically help you guys defeat Darkseid, but you have to do something before we can leave. And he points to his face. And the reason why, because on his face, he has the Metron pattern. Now, the Metron pattern is a circuit that can basically make people immune to the anti-life equation. And so if people are able to actually paint the symbol on their face, then they are immune to the anti-life equation. It gives them the edge to hopefully defeat this huge mess with Darkseid. Now, we actually do jump back over to Blüdhaven. Now, when we do jump over to Blüdhaven, we actually pick up with the son of Darkseid, Kalibak. And right now, you have Kalibak just riding through the ruins of Blüdhaven. And of course, with his hybrid tiger clan. Because when Kalibak was turned into a tiger man, he just made a bunch of other Tiger Man creatures. Honestly, it's kind of weird, but whatever. Either way, though, you do have to be confronted by some of the heroes who are trying to defeat Darkseid. Now, you do have Frankenstein there, Supergirl, Black Adam, Captain Marvel Jr. You do have a lot of different characters there to hopefully stop the forces of Kalibak from doing any more harm to the world. It's them trying to defeat Darkseid any way possible. And so you do have our heroes, Black Adam, Supergirl, Captain Marvel Jr., Frankenstein, and Twaki work together to actually stop Kalibak. But then we actually picked up with Nyx Utan. Now remember, Nyx was a monitor. And remember, monitors are, at this point in DC Comics, are people who watch over the multiverse. And you have a monitor for every single universe. Now when it came to Nyx, he was watching over Earth 51. The problem was Earth 51 was destroyed. And when it was destroyed, Nyx was actually kicked out of the monitors and he was sent down to the main DC Earth. And he kind of forgot where he came from, but he did have flashes of his past life. Now, here's the thing, though. He was just thrown into a prison cell because he is actually immune to the anti-life equation. And so if you are immune to the anti-life equation, you're thrown into this certain kind of prison cell. Now, when he is thrown into this cell, he is confronted by two mysterious characters. Now, these two mysterious characters are basically going to help Nix remember a lot of different things. Now, you do have one guy who's just very hairy and kind of hiding out in the corner of the room, while you have another guy playing with a Rubik's Cube and trying to actually complete the cube in 18 moves or less, because apparently nobody has ever done that before. Now, the hairy guy is really trying his best to help Nix remember his monitor days. And with that, he keeps showing him different kinds of drawings. Now, these drawings were basically done by Nix, but Nix still has no idea about his past life, only small flashes of his past life. But he doesn't understand what those flashes are trying to tell him. But then he sees a picture of a lady. And this lady is Regia Dell. And he remembers that this is the lady he used to be in love with. But right when he does remember that, you do have the Justifiers come back to basically deal with these characters who are immune to the anti-life equation. But right when they're about to shoot these guys off, well, that is the moment you have our other mysterious character being able to actually complete the cube in 17 moves. And that right there is actually very huge, because when he does that, he caused a ping to happen and the entire room is flooded in light. But then we actually pick up with Libra. Now remember, originally Libra was the main bad guy for Final Crisis. And we thought that for a good chunk of the Final Crisis storyline, but then kind of find out that Libra actually works for Darkseid. Now with that being said though, right now you have Libra getting ready to execute someone because he has been helping out the resistance, and that would be the calculator, to basically get rid of him because he has been helping with the resistance. Now he does kind of look towards Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor is very silent. But you then have Libra tell Lex Luthor that he needs to go and help fight against the heroes in Blüdhaven, what we saw earlier when it came to Calabac fighting against Black Adam, Supergirl, and Frankenstein. But you can tell in Lex Luthor's face that he is not pleased to actually do that. Now, the last few pages of Final Crisis really shows that how bad things have gotten across the universe. You have the heroes of Earth just trying to fight against the forces of Darkseid in Blüdhaven. You have the Green Lanterns trying to reach Earth, but the problem is though, they can't actually reach Earth. But on top of that, you can see that other Earths from the multiverse are about to crash into the main DC universe. The president has given up, and he knows that he's about to die because the Justifiers had basically found him. It seems like the end of everything for the entire universe, the multiverse. This is us entering in the last couple chapters of Final Crisis. But with that, you also have Darkseid show that he has completely taken over the body of Dan Turban. He's able to stand up and control his army. He's able to say, it's time for me to wreak havoc across the universe, the multiverse, whatever stands in his way.